This week on the Inktwell, we're taking a look at a brand new Tomoe River Paper notebook from Elemental Paper. This is the Iodine Notebook. Thank you for joining me this week. We're going to be taking a look at the Dot Grid A5 272 page Tomoe River Paper Iodine Notebook. So right off the bat, it's great packaging and it's a pretty heavy notebook, but on the side of the box you get a preview of the spectrograph, the beautiful violet color that Iodine is known for, as well as some extra tidbits from Elemental Paper themselves, like where you can find them on social media and everywhere else online. We'll talk about that a little bit later, though. Looking at the back of the box, we get a quick overview of how Elemental Notebooks came into being, as well as a little tidbit of iodine, chemical element number 53, and a few facts and figures about the notebook itself. I mean, we'll talk about the quality a little bit later here, but oh my goodness, this thing is built like a tank. So, first thing that is striking about this notebook is the violet color. It looks like that in real life, that's not color matching. And on the black-edged paper, you do have the spectrograph again. It's a lovely fabric cover with the elemental symbol embossed on the spine with the number as well. When they originally came out with the notebooks, they wanted to actually emboss the name of the element, but they couldn't get the quality where they wanted. Also included are, in this case, black and violet page markers. And as is the case with every Elemental Paper notebook, you do have a lovely title page that comes in handy. So for this particular review, we're going to be using Diatramentus Petrol, J. Habon, Emerald of Chivor, KWZ Cappuccino, Colorverse Mars Curiosity, and what's left of my sample of Krishna Moonview. As for the writing portion, we're going to be using a generic pencil that I found lying around, a Sharpie that I can't remember which hockey game I got it from, but it came from a hockey game and I've been using it for a few years. A standard Expo dry erase marker, that way we could get a little bit of variation from the Sharpie. And then we're moving on into the fountain pens. We've got a Wing Sung 601, extra fine, a Pilot Metropolitan in medium, a Pilot Custom 743 with a coarse nib or double broad, a Mnemosine Singularity with a medium nib, and the Pilot Elite with a broad nib, as well as Q-tips, because, well, if I'm going to do a notebook review, I might as well do swabs. So let's get into it. First off, we have the Pilot Elite with Diatramentus Petrol. We'll take a close-up look at the color and the feather and bleed a little bit later. This paper reacts very well to each of the writing instruments that I used in this review. Honestly, I was really happy with it. Next here we've got the Pilot Metropolitan. This one inked up with the KWZ Cappuccino. I also wanted to make sure that during the writing sample, the crazier inks, the ones with more sheen or shading potential, were in the wider nibs. That's why the cappuccino is in the Metropolitan, because it's kind of just a straightforward ink. But even on this Tomoe River paper, it looks really good. Next up, we have the Mnemosyne Singularity inked up with Krishna Moonview. Now, this is one of those sheen monster inks, so I felt that it was okay to put it in this medium, and you'll see why a little bit later. Moonview is one of those inks that no matter what pen you put it in, it's going to sheen. Pretty much like Organic Studio. Another note, the Singularity normally hard starts for me, but I found that even with this ink and nib combination, it worked really well on this notebook. Next, we've got the Custom 743 with Emerald of Chivor. Now, this one was freshly inked up right before this, and I made sure to get a few of the shimmer particles from the ink into the converter for the pen. They didn't necessarily show through as much on the paper as I would have thought, but it's still, this ink just looks amazing on Tomoe no matter what, and you can tell, you'll see a little bit later, but Elemental Notebooks really did a good job sourcing their paper. Next, we're moving on to the generic 0.7mm pencil. For the pencil people out there, don't ask me what hardness lead it is, don't ask me any of that stuff, I honestly don't know. Pencils are about as foreign to me as... well, I honestly don't know. They're that foreign to me. Next up, we have the Wingsung 601. This one is inked up with the Mars Curiosity from Colorverse. I may actually find myself doing a review of this particular pen later on. I really like the fill system, even though I don't use it the way it's intended. Now, to round it out, we have the rather blunt-tipped Sharpie. Still writing strong after at least 4 years of use. And last but not least, the Expo Dry Erase Marker. Actually, come to think of it, it's not dry erase, it's oh my goodness, wet erase marker. It's one of the markers that I use when I play Dungeons and Dragons every other week. So looking at the back of the paper, there's quite a bit of show through. I mean, it's pretty intense. Everything showed through, even the pencil. But if you look on that next page, there was no bleed, which is pretty cool. I don't write on the backside of my pages when I have a notebook, but knowing that what I write is going to stay on the page I write it on is really cool. I've got way too many notebooks where heavy ink samples will just go right onto the next page, and it's never a good thing. Also, if you look at the preceding page, since the inks didn't really have too terribly much time to dry, there's no residue smudging on the previous page either, which is also a really good sign for this notebook, and you can see some of the sheening from Krishna Moonview there. So let's look at the color and the feathering, or I should say lack thereof, in each of the writing samples. This paper does a really good job. There's hardly any feathering, if any at all. Honestly, I can't see any. And the sharpness is just superb. Now, moving on to the swabs, we're going to start with Diatramentus petrol. So for each of the ink swabs, I did go ahead and use a rather generous amount of ink on each one. I wanted to see, one, how long it would take to dry, and two, if the excessive amounts of ink would cause any feathering or bleed through onto the next page. Next, we're going to go ahead and do Emerald of Chivor. Then moving on to KWZ Cappuccino. Then we're going to go ahead and follow it up with Colorverse Mars Curiosity. Now, even though I'm cutting time in between each swab, there was only about 5 seconds in between each swab, so the inks are still in the process of drying as I do this. And finishing up the inks, we're going to go ahead and do Krishna Moonview. Now, let's go ahead and look at these swabs. Once again, very little, if any, feathering. And you can see, like, on the left there for Emerald of Chivor, how the edges have a really nice sheen to them. Mars Curiosity is just flat red. And as we scoot over towards Moonview, that sheen really becomes more and more apparent. So for people that like shading and sheen, this is a notebook for you. Speaking of dry time, though, this is a 10-minute clip that I went ahead and sped up 3,000% so you could see how long it took for the wettest portion of Krishna Moonview to actually dry. Now, moving on to how much bleed through, I mean, it shows through quite a bit. That was a lot of ink, but it did not bleed, and it did not smudge onto the preceding page. So, thank you for watching this quick review of the Iodine notebook from Elemental Paper. Disclaimer time, they did send me this notebook for free for review, but that's not really going to change how I feel about the notebook. Their previous offering of the Elemental notebooks with regular paper were kind of hit and miss. Some of my colleagues had some issues with oil buildup, with a lot of bleed, a lot of feathering, and I didn't see any of that here. Whoever they sourced their paper through on this notebook did a really good job, and the quality is spot on. These are really good notebooks, and I would recommend them to anybody. So if you want to pick up this notebook, head on over to elementalpaper.com and click on Buy Now and add it to your cart. You'll be very happy that you did. If you want to purchase any of the inks or some of the pens that were featured in this video, go ahead and head on over to penchalet.com, click on the radio podcast link, and enter Inktwell in the How You Heard About Us for 10% off site-wide. So thank you to the wonderful people at Elemental Paper for providing this notebook for review for free. Thank you to Ron over at Penchalet for being an ongoing sponsor of the Inktwell. And thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, click like. If you didn't like it, well, you know what to do. Either way, subscribe to the channel, support the channel at patreon.com/theinktwell, or Twitter and Instagram at theinktwell. My dogs are telling me it's time to go, so I'll see you next week.